long considered the most controversial book in the Bible.
Preparations of a great war at Nancy. 3 wounded dead within 7 days.
Have you ever stood at the edge of a cliff, knowing something waits just beyond the fog, something ancient, inevitable, and terrifying? That's the feeling creeping over the world right now. Because the calm we're living in isn't peace, it's the pause before prophecy unfolds. Michel de Nostradamus once wrote in veiled poetry of fire from the skies, crumbling empires, and a burning world. Now, some scholars believe that within his cryptic verses lies a final message. Only 5 nations will survive the coming storm, the rest, scattered ash in the winds of history. Stay with us as we explore what Nostradamus' prophecy reveals and how to keep the faith in these challenging times. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more detailed insights. The firestorm prophecy signs the world is burning. In lands where twin rivers run red, this haunting line, pulled from one of Nostradamus' cryptic quatrains, is more than poetic. It is chilling. Interpreters believe the twin rivers refer to the Tigris and Euphrates, lifeblood waterways of the ancient Middle East. Today, that region remains a powder keg of political tension, armed conflict, and spiritual warfare. Blood spills into these rivers once again, and the world watches, uneasy. But this is only the beginning. Across the globe, destabilization unfolds like a prophecy fulfilled. Wars erupt, not just in the Middle East, but from Eastern Europe to Southeast Asia. Famine spreads in vulnerable nations as climate extremes and global inflation choke food supply chains. And the skies themselves, once symbols of hope, crackle with menace. Fire from the sky, as Nostradamus put it, is no longer a metaphor. With every X-class solar flare, scientists warn of communications, blackouts, and grid failures. NASA and NOAA both confirmed that solar storms in 2025 could damage satellites, GPS systems, and power infrastructure, effectively throwing entire nations into technological darkness. This isn't just mysticism anymore. Modern science, like ancient prophecy, is sounding the alarm. And it grows darker still. Nostradamus wrote of iron rain, burning skies, and cities drowning in silver foam. Husazanti Plident, Hu 04, and a prating main, and at cities, Datamus say, who all, prating skies, who all ham. These phrases echo eerily with today's fears. Hypersonic missiles, nuclear escalation, tsunamis triggered by tectonic shifts, and chemical fallout that coats cities in toxic haze. The silver foam could even symbolize nuclear ash, or the radioactive waves that follow such a strike. Entire coastlines like those of Japan, California, or Southeast Asia face existential threats should one wrong move be made by global powers. The firestorm prophecy is not simply about a natural disaster or military clash. It's about convergence. Every pillar that holds civilization together, geopolitical stability, environmental balance, and moral clarity, is trembling. Whether you view Nostradamus as a prophet or a poet, his warnings seem closer to the truth with each passing day. Hold on a second. Tap that like button, drop a comment below, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Alright, let's keep going. Nation 1. Japan. The island that refuses to fall. Land of the rising sun. Gardens untouched by flame. Among the hundreds of cryptic verses left by Nostradamus, one line continues to spark intense curiosity. Land of the rising sun, gardens untouched by flame. Many believe this refers unmistakably to Japan, a nation that has defied disaster, resisted destruction, and stood tall in the face of chaos. If Nostradamus foresaw a global collapse where only 5 nations would survive, it's no mystery why Japan might be one of them. Resilience is woven into Japan's national identity. From the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to the devastation of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, Japan has endured pain few nations can imagine. Nuclear meltdown at Fukushima, economic recessions, natural disasters on a biblical scale. And yet, like a phoenix, Japan continues to rise, never perfect, but always persistent. Where others crumble, it rebuilds. Where others fracture, it unites. The phrase, "gardens untouched by flame," is almost poetic justice, hinting at Japan's ability to shield its heart even while its edges burn. But it's not just grit, it's genius. Japan's technological advancement is among the most sophisticated on Earth. From robotics to quantum computing, its innovations touch everything from medicine to defense. Cities like Tokyo operate like living organisms, blending efficiency with resilience. This technological edge is complemented by a cultural force: discipline. Rooted in centuries-old traditions of honor, respect, and collective responsibility, Japan's people are among the most adaptive in times of crisis. Their ability to respond calmly and effectively, whether in the face of an earthquake or a global pandemic, is nothing short of remarkable. Geopolitically, Japan occupies a unique position. An island nation with limited natural resources, it relies on diplomacy and strategy rather than brute force. It's geographically isolated enough to avoid entanglement in most continental conflicts, but connected enough to remain globally influential. This balance of separation and strength may be its greatest shield in times of global upheaval. In Nostradamus' vision of a burning world, Japan's quiet strength stands out. It is not a nation built on conquest, but one forged in perseverance. If the prophecy of 5 surviving nations is true, Japan, the land of the rising sun, may indeed be the first to endure, not because of its might, but because of its mind. And if Japan is the island that refuses to fall, then our journey takes us next to the vast, frozen expanse of the East, to a land wrapped in silence, snow, and secrets. Nostradamus, in his haunting language, wrote, "From the cold lands, the bear shall sleep through the fire." A single line that conjures powerful imagery: a land ruled by ice and flame, a beast that endures not by fighting, but by waiting. Most scholars agree. The bear is Russia. Nation 2. Russia. The sleeping bear in the cold light. To understand why Russia may be one of the 5 surviving nations, one must first understand what it means to be a sleeping bear, a creature that rests, not out of weakness, but out of quiet strength. The symbolism is chillingly accurate. Russia, with its brutal winters, impenetrable forests, and vast steppes, has often taken the world by surprise. It doesn't rush, it watches, it absorbs, and when it finally moves, it changes the shape of history. Nostradamus' line about the cold lands where the lights dance could very well be a reference to the aurora borealis, the shimmering atmospheric phenomenon best seen in the far north Russia's domain. His prophecy of a bear that shall sleep through the fire suggests something remarkable. While the world is engulfed in flames, this colossal nation might survive by doing what it has always done best: enduring. Russia's sheer size is part of its protection. With 11 time zones, a wealth of natural resources, and one of the largest untapped wildernesses on the planet, Russia is not dependent on external powers. It produces its own oil, grows its own food, and shields itself with geography. Its terrain is a natural barrier, one that defeated Napoleon and stalled Hitler. In a global war, this vastness becomes a shield more powerful than any wall or missile system. But survival may not come from war. It may come from restraint. Some believe Nostradamus' bear, sleeping through the fire, hints at neutrality, a refusal to engage when the world burns. It's no secret that Russia has often embraced isolationist policies in the past. If the next global catastrophe is nuclear or environmental, disengagement might not be cowardice, but wisdom. Of course, Russia's current role in international conflicts, including its ongoing tensions with the West and the war in Ukraine, makes this view controversial. But if Nostradamus' bear is not roaring, if it is watching silently as others expire, then perhaps a future pivot awaits. One in which survival isn't achieved through dominance, but withdrawal, isolation, patience. In this vision of 5 surviving nations, Russia stands not as a conqueror, but as a remnant. A land vast enough to absorb disaster, silent enough to outlast chaos, and brutal enough to withstand what others cannot. The sleeping bear may yet rise, but not as a predator, as a witness, as a survivor. Nation 3. USA. The battered but unbroken eagle. And now, we turn to the most controversial nation on this list, the United States of America. A superpower tested by fire, yet still standing beneath a smoke-filled sky. In the cryptic words of Nostradamus, "The eagle shall bleed, but not die, wings clipped by midnight's fire." Many see this as a striking image of the American spirit, wounded, perhaps even grounded, but far from defeated. The eagle, long recognized as the symbol of the United States, is pictured here not soaring high, but enduring unimaginable trials with a strange kind of grace. The past few years have pushed America to the edge. Civil unrest tears through its streets, protests escalate into riots, and communities once united now find themselves divided along deep political and ideological lines. Economic volatility rattles the middle class as inflation, debt, and income disparity send shockwaves through homes and markets alike. The American dream seems to flicker, but it hasn't gone out. Foreign tensions only add to the storm. The Russia-Ukraine war, the growing influence of China, and cyber attacks targeting American infrastructure suggest that global powers are testing the resolve of this once untouchable eagle. Its wings, clipped by midnight's fire, might symbolize attacks at the heart of America's military, economy, or even its identity. And yet the flag still flies. Why? Because, like the prophecy hints, America bleeds, but doesn't die. This nation's vast geographic protection, bordered by oceans on two sides, still grants it a level of strategic insulation unmatched by many. And while internal strife is real, so too is resilience. The United States remains a hub of technological advancement, innovation, and global influence. Its Silicon Valley drives digital revolutions. Its cultural exports shape the world. And even in turmoil, its institutions, flawed as they may be, continue to operate. There's another angle to consider. America's story has always been one of crisis and reinvention. From civil war to economic depression to global conflict, each chapter is marked by devastation and a strange, almost defiant comeback. Some argue that this relentless ability to adapt is exactly why Nostradamus may have seen it as one of the 5 nations to survive the Great Fire. The eagle may never soar as high again, but it will still fly. And so, the prophecy stands. Amid burning cities and echoing division, the battered but unbroken eagle might still carry the flame of survival, not as a conquering empire, but as a humbled, tested, and transformed nation still holding on when many others have already fallen. Nation 4. China. The silent dragon that rises without flame. From the shadows of empires and the ruins of global collapse, another figure stirs sown, not breathing fire, but wielding silence like a weapon. This is the dragon. And according to Nostradamus, the dragon shall rise with fireless breath. For many interpreters, the symbolism is unmistakable. The dragon is Chinese, ancient, vast, calculating. But the phrase, fireless breath, is the part that captivates and unsettles modern readers. In a world obsessed with visible force and military might, China's true power has emerged not from open warfare, but from its mastery of the invisible battlefield. Cyberspace, economics, and technological supremacy. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and state-sponsored cyber warfare, these are the modern weapons of the dragon. While missiles rust in silos elsewhere, China has invested billions in surveillance, data dominance, and autonomous warfare. Its influence expands not by firebombs, but through ports, cables, and code. The rise of this fireless force has redefined the very idea of war and survival. Historically, China has favored defense over invasion. The Great Wall was not built to expand, but to repel. That instinct continues. Despite modern border skirmishes and geopolitical tensions, China's doctrine largely remains: consolidate power within, secure influence without. Its vast population, Deep cultural cohesion and centralized governance allow it to implement strategies that span decades, sometimes centuries. It doesn't rush. It waits, plans, and positions. That patience might be its greatest shield. The dragon's strength also lies in its economy. Through strategic infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, China has woven itself into the economic lifelines of over 140 countries. It exports not only products, but dependency. And that economic reach may protect it more than any standing army ever could. As the world fractures under the weight of its own short-sightedness, China's long-term vision could place it not just in a position of survival but of leadership. It may not conquer the ashes of the fallen, but it could guide what rises from them. A new world, orderless Western, more authoritarian, and subtly shaped by the quiet breath of the dragon. And therein lies the core of Nostradamus's cryptic foresight. The dragon will not scorch the earth, but it will still rise. With no breath of fire, but with tendrils of control extending through every server, supply chain, and screen. China may not strike first, but when the smoke clears, it may be standing tallest not because it fought hardest, but because it endured longest. Nation 5, the wildcard, India, Brazil, or a coalition of the South? And now we arrive at the mystery, perhaps the most debated line in all of Nostradamus's final visions. He wrote, "Where the river swallows stars, the land of many tongues shall unite, shielded by no army but fate itself." Unlike the other 4 nations, this one is veiled in ambiguity. Some say it's India. Others argue for Brazil. A few suggest it's not a single country at all, but a coalition of nations scattered across the global South, bound not by borders but by shared resilience. Let's begin with India. A land of deep spirituality, democratic endurance, and staggering diversity. Over 1 billion souls, hundreds of languages, and an ancient legacy of survival, India has been the crucible of empires, invaders, and revolutions. And through it all, it adapts. It bends, but rarely breaks. Despite poverty, pollution, and geopolitical pressure, it continues to grow not just in economic output, but in global influence. India's space program, its tech industry, its spiritual backbone, these are not accidents. They're evidence of a nation that's learned to thrive through internal complexity and external storms. It is a land of many tongues, and some believe it may be the very nation Nostradamus foresaw. But others point to Brazil, tucked deep in the southern hemisphere, geographically removed from many global fault lines. Brazil is rich in resources, rainforest, and renewal. Its people have weathered dictatorship, inflation, and social upheaval, yet the nation endures with rhythm, creativity, and quiet determination. If the river that swallows stars is a poetic image of the Amazon, then Brazil might be the final sanctuary, protected not by military might, but by nature and distance. A haven simply too far to be first in the line of destruction. Still others go broader. They see this 5th survivor not as a single flag, but a cluster of neutral or less entangled nations, those that have long stayed out of the world's titanic clashes. Countries across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia that have been overlooked in the great power games, but may now emerge as the last bastions of peace. These are the nations that don't lead wars, but survive them, shielded not by bombs, but by fate. This is the wild card of Nostradamus's vision, the survivor no one expected, the land of unexpected strength, unshaken by global chaos, shielded by no army but fate itself. These words echo like a riddle, suggesting that divine providence, not military power, will determine who survives the end. And perhaps that's the deeper meaning, that in the final reckoning, it won't be the strongest, richest, or most advanced who stand. It will be the nations that remain rooted spiritually, culturally, and communally. Those who know how to live with the earth, not dominate it. Those who listen for fate's whisper and survive not through domination, but through divine appointment. Shall we now explore the aftermath these 5 nations may face and what kind of world they might inherit? The Song of the Five, and the rebirth of the world. And now, as the echoes of fire, war, and collapse fade into a heavy silence, Nostradamus leaves us with one final vision, not of ruin, but rebirth. He writes, "From the five corners shall rise one song, sung in voices ancient and new. They will plant the seed of the lost Eden beneath a sky that finally weeps clean." This is no anthem of victory, no trumpet of conquest. It is a lullaby for the wounded earth, a call not to rebuild in the image of past empires, but to restore what was lost: Eden, innocence, harmony. The five nations that remain are not the architects of domination, but the caretakers of healing. The eagle, the bear, the dragon, the island, and the silent land of many tongues, they carry the burden not of triumph, but of stewardship. Nostradamus, so often framed as the prophet of doom, may have instead been a herald of awakening. He saw beyond the flames and the fallen towers. He saw unity rising from diversity, wisdom blooming from ruin. His message is not one of fear, but of choice. A cosmic reminder that destruction is not the end but the doorway to something sacred. The final line is not a warning, it's a question. The stars have spoken. Will we listen? Will we, as individuals, as nations, as a species, heed the whispers of prophecy and conscience? Will we seek power or purpose? Will we ignore the tremors of history or align our hearts with something greater? The world may burn, but from five corners, a song still rises, and in that song lies our final hope. What we do now will echo across centuries. The future is not yet written, but the pen is already in our hands. The nature of the salvation of God. He saved us not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to His own mercy. Titus 3:5. There is perhaps no richer declaration of God's saving grace than what we find in Titus 3:7. In just a few verses, the Apostle Paul unfolds the astonishing mercy of God towards sinners, the transformative work of the Holy Spirit, and the eternal hope made possible through Jesus Christ. At the center is one profound truth. He saved us. But what does that mean? In today's world, salvation is often reduced to a vague hope of going to heaven or escaping hell. For some, it's merely a religious phrase, a box checked in childhood, or a prayer whispered once in desperation. Yet the Word of God presents salvation not as a fleeting decision or a narrow promise, but as a sweeping, eternal plan rooted in divine love, accomplished by divine power, and destined for divine glory. Titus 3:7 acts as a theological summary, moving from our spiritual ruin to God's merciful rescue. It gives us a complete picture, past, present, and future, of what it means to be saved. To grasp the full nature of God's salvation, we will walk through 10 distinct aspects of this great work, beginning before the foundation of the world and concluding with the glorification of the saints. 1. Election. Chosen before the foundation of the world. Salvation did not begin with our decision, it began with God. Paul writes in Ephesians 1:4-5, He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world. In love He predestined us for adoption to Himself as sons through Jesus Christ. Election is God's sovereign act of setting His love upon His people before they ever took a people to lyre. Breath. This choosing was not based on foreseen faith or good deeds. It was not God looking down the corridors of time and deciding who would deserve heaven. Rather, it was sheer mercy. God, knowing our rebellion, chose us still. This truth humbles us, silences boasting, and ignites worship. We are saved not because of who we are, but because of who God is. 2. The gospel call. The voice that awakens. While election is eternal, it becomes experiential through the gospel call. Romans 10:17 tells us, faith comes by hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. The call of God goes out when the gospel is preached. It is through this message that the dead are raised, the blind see, and the lost are found. There are 2 aspects to this call: the external and the internal. The external call is the open invitation to all who hear the gospel. But the internal call is the Spirit's effectual work that draws the elect to respond in faith. This is not mere information, it is divine summons. As Jesus said in John 6:44, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. And when he calls, the soul awakens." 3. Regeneration. Made alive by the Spirit. Titus 3:5 explicitly says, "He saved us by the washing of regeneration and renewal of the Holy Spirit." Regeneration is the new birth. Before this moment, we were spiritually dead, enslaved to sin, blind to truth, and unable to please God.